also, the most interesting thing about him is that he has 9 grandchildren, and he is known as Dad. We know him as our beloved county tax assessor collector. He's done a great job at that for I don't even know how many years, but enough. And he is the next U.S. Congressman from District 6 in the great state of Texas. All right.
Thank you very much. You want to help me do this?
You ready?
Yep.
You would need that right away.
And let me start by, because I didn't join the group a minute ago, thank you. Thank you very much. Out of the field 11, we got 61% in Tarrant County. And due largely to some of the people in this room. Thank you so much. And on to the 22nd, we'll win this thing. I'm here to talk about what I do for a living still, and that's take money from people. We have a large tax office. You probably know that. We're the 3rd largest county, so we have the 3rd largest tax office. We're the 3rd busiest office in motor vehicle work, and that's the most intense part of the office. And in property tax, a lot of people don't know this, but we have more property tax accounts than anybody in the state of Texas. We passed Harris County back in 2015 because of all the minerals. And that's a big deal in the Tarrant County Tax Office. In a 4-year period, starting right after I came in May of 2011, we more than doubled the number of tax accounts in Tarrant County due to minerals. I collect over $3.5 billion a year for over 70 entities. That's most of the taxing units in Tarrant County, with the exception of the City of Grapevine, City of Colleyville, and Grapevine Colleyville ISD, because they all share a tax office and have for many, many years. I'm going to talk mainly about the Appraisal District tonight. There's a lot of confusion among people generally. All of you are better informed about these things than I would say most people are. A lot of people think we're all one, tax office and the Appraisal District. We're not. We are kind of joined at the hip because we have to, by law, take whatever data the Appraisal District gives us to do our work in the tax office. But the important thing is the Appraisal District, they set the value for all property, they grant all the exemptions, okay? And they provide everybody with certified numbers, certified values. They give us a roll, has all the names and addresses, all the values, exemptions, all of that, once a year, and then they give us supplements every month with additions and corrections. And since their new computer system went in, it's been mostly corrections. I won't even tell you what a nightmare that's been. But anyway, we get it. We get the values from TAD. We get the rates from all of the governing bodies of the taxing units. We make that calculation and send out a tax assessment in the form of a tax statement. And then we start immediately to collect that money. We don't keep it. It's in and out, comes into my account, and is then distributed to all the taxing units in the county, including Tarrant County. Okay. Now, this is very important because everything that's done in the appraisal office and my office is all done in accordance with state law, and there's a specific calendar we all follow. What's important to you is this. In July, it's actually due July 25th, sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. The appraisal roll, which has all the certified values, is due. And the appraisal district sends that to me, and they send it to all of the taxing units. It's usually 95% complete, because people are still at that point protesting their value, and some have filed lawsuits related to their values, but it's always at least 95% complete. That happens July 25th. By August 7th, all the taxing units have to publish in the newspaper what's called truth in taxation. That's what it's called in the law, and it's their rollback rate and their effective rate. The effective rate is the rate that would generate the same amount of revenue as the year before on the same property taxed the year before. So it doesn't include new property or any kind of new accounts, all right? That's important because that is the rate you want to compare the adopted rate to. So that happens in August. Well, then in September, the taxing units will adopt their budgets and then adopt a tax rate that will fund that budget. Now, there are some taxing units, and usually it's school districts, that are on a July fiscal year instead of an October fiscal year. We have some in Tarrant County, but almost everybody else is going to be on the October year, which means that they're going to adopt their budget in September and then adopt that tax rate to fund the budget. Now, why is that important? It's this. All the taxing units know what the values are, what the value for their taxing unit is, before they adopt their budget and tax rate. Okay? The equation is always value multiplied by rate equals levy. That never changes. So they know what that value is. If they adopt a budget that increases spending, they have to increase revenue, because by law, all the taxing units in the state have to have a balanced budget, right? If they have, most taxing units have multiple sources of revenue, especially cities. They have fees and fines, sales tax, and all that. But if they increase spending very much, then they'll have to increase property taxes, because it's too big a part of the pie for their revenue. So they're going to set a tax rate that will fund the budget they adopted. The budget comes first. And then, if that tax rate is greater than the effective rate that they published back in August, that's a tax increase for that taxing unit. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Because it's really important, because the taxing units don't always publicize that information. Value comes first, then the truth in taxation gives you the effective rate, then they're going to adopt the budget, and then a tax rate to fund that budget. If the budget increases spending, they've got to increase revenue, and if the rate they use is higher than the effective rate, it's a tax increase. You don't compare their tax rate this year to the tax rate last year, because that's irrelevant. Because everything starts all over. It's a whole different set of numbers. You're going to have a different budget, you're going to have different values, and so adopting the same tax rate as the year before really doesn't mean anything. What you want to compare the adopted rate to is the effective rate. All right? Okay. Now, the board of directors, appraisal districts are kind of like shadow governments in a way, because they operate, the meetings are open to the public and all of that, nobody ever comes. And they do their business. It's usually, they have to by law meet quarterly. Tarrant will normally have at least 10 meetings a year, sometimes less. We're not going to have another meeting till May, because they tell me there's really nothing to discuss. But they're composed of 5 members, generally. They can expand that, okay? But the governance of the appraisal district are people that are appointed by all the taxing units. And the taxing units have, their vote is weighted based on the amount of levy they have, the amount of taxes they have. Consequently, the big votes are City of Fort Worth ISD, City of Arlington, Arlington ISD, Tarrant County, okay? They have a lot of vote. Different taxing units can combine their votes, and they do that. For example, where we are, Northeast Tarrant County always has one member on the board, and that's because the taxing units up here combine their votes to get one member from Northeast Tarrant County. And I'll tell you, Mark Wood is your representative on the board right now, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best because he asks a lot of questions. He's engaged, more so than some of the others. But they're appointed. Now, as I believe Mr. Snyder mentioned a moment ago, the governor's tax reform plan also was in the Betancourt bill, that's B2 last year. All of the district board of directors would have to be elected officials. That doesn't mean that you would be electing the board. It means that the board itself would have to be, they would have to appoint people to the board that are already elected officials. In other words, they would be city council members or city or county commissioners or school board members, things like that. That way there's some accountability to the public, because right now the appraisal districts aren't really accountable to the public. They're accountable to the taxing units. Okay? That's an important distinction. This tells you who all can appoint. And it's basically anyone who taxes you will have a vote. And like I said before, they can combine their votes, they can split their votes. Tarrant County splits their votes. Okay? And they'll vote for several different, I'll say several, maybe two, maybe even three members. So there's a lot of leeway given the taxing units on how they apply their vote. Here's more of the requirements. They serve 2-year terms, and we just went through this process. We just went through this process, so there won't be anything else for another 2 years. Unless the reform measure that the governor is talking about gets passed in the next legislature. And what will change probably will just be the fact that they need to be elected officials and therefore be accountable directly to the people. Now, interestingly, the board is limited in what it can do, in what it can get into. For example, we can talk about values generally. We can talk about the values of the city of North Richland Hills and why it went up and where it went up and those kind of things. But we cannot talk about your value. We cannot talk about anyone's specific value. The law requires that we not be engaged in the actual appraisal of someone's property, which is why if you disagree with your appraisal, you can't come to the board of directors. I mean, you can, but it wouldn't do you any good. There's a separate board called the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board. You have that, and that's made up of about 72 citizens in the county, and they meet in three-person panels and hear all these protests every year. As you saw from the calendar, you're going to get your appraisal in April. You have until the end of May. You have until June 1 to file a protest. And if you haven't done it by then you lose out for the year. And you have to accept the appraisal you were given. And so they meet for several months. These people are paid. It's a paid position. It's part-time. And they're chosen by the administrative law judge of the county. And that changes from time to time within the county. So that's the process. If you don't like your appraisal, you can go to the appraisal district and work with appraisal district staff. You can do it online. and you'll be working with staff there as well. Or you can go before the Appraisal Review Board. If you're not satisfied then you can file a lawsuit in district court. And a lot of people do. Usually they're wealthy, or it's a corporation. And they quite often will succeed in getting their appraisal board. Okay? But the Appraisal Review Board is separate from the district board. It's appointed by a judge. All the members are appointed by a judge. The only thing the district board appoints is the chairman of the ARB. And they're there just to hear protests. Okay? So when you think about the appraisal district, remember, because it's big, there's over 200 employees, the appraisal board will appoint the chief appraiser, and the chief appraiser is like the CEO. He's like the head guy. They hire and fire him. He hires and fires everybody else. But no one is directly accountable to the people. The directors are accountable to the people that appointed them, right? And the chief appraiser is accountable to the board. So no one in that whole process is elected, which is why part of the reform package that is, we're hoping will be passed has that element where people will be, who are appointed to the board will be elected officials, and at least there will be some accountability then for what happens at the appraisal district. Okay? So, here's the duties of the CAD is the Central Appraisal District. That's what they're called, the County Appraisal District. It's not a real hard job unless things go wrong. And then you really should do what normal boards of, directors on boards do, and that's ask a lot of questions and try and implement some solutions. The biggest challenge the Tarrant Appraisal District has had ever since its inception was in 2015, when they actually started at the end of 2014, and that was a whole new computer program, computer platform, and it didn't work. And they made the monumentally stupid decision to, when they went live with the new system, to cut off the old system. Instead of running parallel for a while, like anyone with a brain would. And so we were all slaves to that new system that didn't work. And so you've probably read a lot of articles in the newspaper, heard a lot of, most of the problems have been resolved. Okay, it's been extremely painful, but most of it's been resolved, and I would say they're almost out of the woods, although not quite. But at least on the appraisal side, we seem to be getting correct information now. So, but the point of all this is you have a pretty large agency that does an extremely important job that affects every property owner in the state of Texas, or in our case, Tarrant County, that is not elected and not really accountable to the people, at least not directly. And I, for one, hope that changes. So with that, yes, ma'am.
So is this the same procedure for every county in Texas?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And has it always been this way, non-representative?
It's called the Peabody Bill, and was passed in 1979, creating central appraisal districts in every county. And they all have the same governance, same type of governance. Now, you can have more than 5 members. You can have up to 13. And you could have the tax assessor collector be a voting member. I'm not currently. I wanted to be. Believe me, I can talk. They let me talk occasionally. But I can't vote. And if you've ever been on a board, you know the importance of having that vote. So at least for Tarrant County, I would love for the tax assessor to have a vote. So we'll see what happens in the future. But anyway, that's how, yeah, we all have the same governance, we all have the same type of appraisal district in the state of Texas, so. Yes, sir.
Okay, on the appraised value the appraised value said 16, 17, the county was how much of an increase?
Could you repeat that?
Okay, your 16 appraised value set, right? And then you appraised 17, correct?
Right.
What was that increase? 3%, 5% for the whole county?
For the whole county? No, it was closer to 10.
Okay, what was the appraised value from 15, 16, what was that?
That was also large, although not as large.
So-
We've had 3 years in a row of very large value increases in the county.
But the national, I looked this up yesterday, the national inflation rate of our country last year was 1.9%.
Right.
And the year before that, 1.7%.
Texas law requires that all properties be appraised at market value, whatever that is. Whatever that is. And the market in the DFW area is really hot, has been for the last few years. And it's going to continue to be hot for a while because we have so many people moving here. And if you're using real estate as an investment, that's great. If you're having to pay taxes on it, it's not so great, you know, if you're living in it. But yeah, and that's the law. It has to be whatever market value is, and that's usually set by sales. The sale price of a house kind of sets the market for that house. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us the credentials for the person that's an appraiser?
No. I could try, but no. I have one more, yes, sir. And I know you.
I know, Ron. We have two candidates for tax assessor collector, and you're well aware of the issues that the board has and the chief appraiser has, which I have a litany of things in my hand that I've not made public with the issues Tad has with the two candidates that we do have. What advice could you give Mr. Snyder or Mrs. Burgess?
The first bit of advice I would give is to sit down and talk to this gentleman. No, really, he has some good information that you need to see related to the appraisal district and, you know, how people have been appointed and that sort of thing. So that would be my advice. And I want to thank you. You did a great job. He was a candidate for the appraisal district board and almost won. He came close.
24 votes.
24 votes. So, and yeah, but there is a process involved in this, and I would recommend that both of y'all talk to him about how that process played out this year. Thank you all very much.